Yeah, we are live. Huh?
Yep. Hey guys.
Okay. Hi everyone. Yeah.
Yep. Hey guys.
Okay. Sorry. Shall we start, Raj?
Sure, we are on air.
Hi everyone. Welcome to KotlinHyderabad. Yes, we are having a meeting after a long while. Uh, here we have. Today we are having a speaker, Nav Singh, with us. He's going to give a presentation on Android code base, concise Android code base. He's actually a mentor at Udacity, Android mentor at Udacity, and he's a GDG Montreal co-organizer. And here you go. We have Nav Singh. Are you ready to start?
Yep, you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm able to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me share my screen.
Yeah.
So do you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, here is a little bit about myself. I'm Nav Singh, and I'm working as an Android developer at Manulife. It's a Canada-based insurance company, and also I am a GdgMontreal organizer, and we are organizing events related to Android and Kotlin here. And here are some of the links related to my profile that you can follow or just to stay in touch. And also I'm writing a few Medium articles related to the technology like iOS or Android. So yeah, this is a little bit about myself, and today we will talk about Kotlin codebase, how we can write effective Kotlin. It doesn't matter if you're writing for Android or you're writing multi-platform or using it for your server side. So first we will go through just Kotlin for everyone, and then we will cover some library related stuff from Android KTX that is specific for Android developers. So without wasting any time, I don't have any slides for those things. We will go through the code base. So let me share my editor so we can start from there. Do you see code base?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, nice. So before just starting with this, there are three files I opened in editor. This is our main file where we write the code on your left side of your screen. And then we have one Java class. It's called Java person at the top right corner. And we have two Kotlin classes, one with the constructor parameters and one with the body. So we will start from here. So as you know, like we are writing Java since I think many of you like writing from 10 years or 5 years or 2 years. So in 2016, when I heard about Kotlin, so I started writing Kotlin, and everybody is starting like IntelliJ having plugin. You can just convert to Kotlin file and that's it. So we call ourselves as a Kotlin developers, right? From their own words, like we converted the file and we know what is well and where, but there are more stuff in the Kotlin that we can use to write effective code. So first I will start with how we are creating objects and setting their values. Like for in this case, the first example, we will start with the person. So I have a class called person second version. So if you see, I created here a constructor, and then I setting its properties, name, hobby, and age. This is the old Java way, but how we can make it like a more Kotlin way? We can use, there are few scope functions in Kotlin. There are 5. So we will use apply here. So we will see how we can use this to make this more written in a Kotlin way. So I created a second version, just copy that one. So rather than going through again with the first, we are creating a construct parameter variable and then setting the values, we can just apply the properties directly to the object. So here you can simply set whatever you want, name, and hobby is equals to like coding, and it is like 12 or whatever. So this is, you see, this is the old way we are creating objects in Java, and this is, we can mitigate like the lot of boilerplate code, like calling every time the object variable person second version dot name dot hobby and age. So you can simply apply the scope functions to make it more better and more Kotlin look like. So this was the first example. The next is about exceptions in Kotlin. So we have a lot of functions on collections. So, but we don't. If you know about it, it's really good. But if you don't, then it's really a good thing to know that Kotlin don't have a checked exceptions. So if you are using functions like first or single, they will not, the compiler will not warn you, or you can't simply go with that. So let's see. First, we will see the example of first. So here I am saying, like, I created the list of objects, 3 objects, person, person2, and person3. These are the here. And there is no any person with who is having hobby Java. And I just want that first person whose hobby is Java. So if I run this, code, it will throw an exception like element not found, or that's it. But in the code, if you see, you will not get any error, or you will not get any any compiler warning. So you need to be careful when you are using functions from the collection. So if you see the definition of the first here, oops, just a sec. So if you see here, the definition of the first, it says it will give you the element matching the given predicate, but if there is no element, it will throw an exception, no such element exception. And if you see my screen, and there is an exception, collection contains no element matching with that given predicate. So you need to be careful when you are using those kind of functions over with the collections. And the same thing for the single. And rather than using first, to be on safe side, you can use first or null, and it will just return you null or if there is element. So you can avoid those kind of scenarios where you are facing any exceptions in your code. The next example we will cover about the single or single null. This is also same related to the first one. It's having 2 things. First, it will throw exception if there is no if there is no element, or if there are more than one element in your collection, it doesn't return you the first one. So you need to handle these scenarios. So rather than using single, because sometimes it's not like every time we have hard coded this in our code base. Sometimes we get data from APIs and we don't know if there are multiple objects, or even there is no any object related to our filtering criteria or the predicate that we are giving to our single function. So you can simply use single or null to handle those situations. And I will post a link after the end of this session about the Kotlin checked exceptions. There is an ongoing conversation to adding those into the Kotlin, but the Kotlin team don't want yet, or they don't convinced with that theory yet to adding checked exceptions. So, but maybe in future you can see something related to the compiler side. So whenever you use single or first, you will you will able to see the warnings, like if you are using single, hey, there is a chances for exceptions. You need to be aware of those things. And the next thing is strings, how we are comparing strings. So I have str1 and str2 here. One is uppercase and one is a mixture of capital and lower cases. So most of the time we are comparing, like we are converting first to the lowercase both the objects that we receive, and then we comparing the elements, right? So under the hood, it will create a new objects for both, like str1 to lowercase, it will create another object, and same for the str2. So to avoid those kind of memory related conceptions, you can use equals in Kotlin, and you can pass a parameter like ignore case is equals to true. So this will help you to avoid creation of not required objects. Okay. And the next thing is platform based types. So whenever we use Java libraries or classes in our Kotlin, they are treated as a platform. They are treated as a platform types that Kotlin doesn't know about if it can be null or not nullable, or it must have a value. So you need to take care of those things. So I will give you a sample example here. So I created a one class. If you see in your right side here, it's a Java person, and it has name, hobby, and age. So I created one object called Java person, and I set its name to Roy. And now if you want to do something with this, you will see. So it's Java person, and when you start typing your variables, you will see that the type of the variable with the exclamation mark at the end. So that means Kotlin doesn't know about if it's a string or if it's going to be non-nullable, and it's totally on your. It totally depends on the developer how he wants to treat the Java types in Kotlin. So either you want to treat it as like a string, or if you are damn sure that it will never be a null, you can simply use it. Or on the safe side, you can use treat it as a nullable, and from there is a more safety in your code base. I can say now if you see the code, now I am sure here like it's not going to be a nullable ever, because I put the nullable check on it with the help of the scope function, which is called let. And here I told to the compiler that I want to treat the name property of Java person as a nullable item. And same for the streams and other classes like live data. They are written in Java, and you need to treat them accordingly. The next thing that we are going to cover, it's about checking the nullability. So if you are writing Javas in like from very early days, or writing from years, you still writing Kotlin, but you're writing it in old Java way. So we are checking if Java person.name it's not equals to null, do some stuff, right? But how we can avoid this lengthy code, or we can use the Kotlin features here. So as I earlier shows you here, so this is the null check. So we are saying that if name is it's under the hood, it says like if the name is not null, proceed with your code. So it will execute the body of the let. And the other thing is the other operators are, there are two double exclamations that you can use to, it's like a non-null assertion. So when when you want to use those, you have to be very sure that it will never be a null. Or on the safe side, you can simply use the question mark with any functions like scope, let, apply, or there are many other functions in Kotlin. So either you can use something like Java person name, and then you can do whatever you want if you want to take its length or any characters from it. So, but this is bad practice in a Kotlin code base. If you have double exclamations for non assertions, you need to be it treated as a code smell. So it's better to use a question mark with the other scope functions or other functions that are available in Kotlin, just to be on the safe side. So this is how you can avoid writing this old way if check in the Java. So yes, yeah, this one you can you can easily avoid this with using a question mark or the other operator that I just described. And next, there is a trick like we can write more like a Kotlin way. If you want to swap two variables, you can, rather than creating third variable or writing like a big program in old way for like a Java, you can simply use the scope function called also, and just with the 3 lines you are able to perform the swapping of 2 functions in Kotlin. And next I will cover about the with scope function, which is in Kotlin again, and it comes under the Kotlin scope functions. This is the old way we are writing our code in Java. If we want to write just a second. So this is the old way calling functions in Java. We are creating first object and then we are calling objects from that. So let's say there are 5 or 10 methods that you need to call. You will creating this kind of code in your code base. So rather than creating this, like every time referencing the variable with to call the function, you can avoid this using the with function. So it will receive, let's say I am giving it a variable or the object that I just created above, and you can call the functions on it, and even without referencing with this. So you can avoid a lot of boilerplate code that you don't need to write in your Kotlin code base. So this, if you see now, it's like you can remove the lot of code, and even if you don't want to keep the reference for the object, you can just replace with the, you can just create object here and then just call the functions from there. And next we will cover about the infix notation. It's in Kotlin, and it's again a feature of Kotlin. If your functions have only one parameter function, you can call it without using braces for passing parameters when you are calling those functions. So here is the example for the infix function. So I created one function add, with it's the extension function. If you see here, This is the another feature of Kotlin, that you can create extension functions for any classes, for strings or your own custom classes. So here I am calling this function, if you see here in the print line in fix operator. So you, rather than using the braces for that, you simply write the function with the n variable that I created, for which is equals to 5 before, and after executing this, it will print you the value like 10. And next one is about using operators for your collections. Kotlin operators, they are very, Kotlin supports the operator overloading, and you can use the same plus and minus operators with your collections too. But you need to be careful because it will return you the new variables when you are using those operators. So if I'm here, I created a list of persons, and then I'm using the plus operator to add another object into it. It will gives you the another list. So rather than using the only functions related from the collections like add or add all, you can use the operators too if you want to be like a more concise code in your and next one is when over if. So there is a when keyword, or it's a expression that you can use in your code base in two ways. Like you can use it as expression, or you can use it to replace your switch statements that you write in Java, or you can replace your if else if. So here is the sample code. So I created two variables, n and m, and then I'm checking if n is greater than m, or then else if, and then else. And for these kind of scenarios, even the compiler will complain you like it should be replaced with the null. If you just hover over the if statement, you will see the option, and you can just hit an option enter, or going by manual, you can simply say replace if with when. And now it's like a more structured, and it looks very neat and clean way, more Kotlin way that you can write your code. So this is in the Kotlin way, and you can use when also as an expression. But there is a major case that you need to be take care of. Like when is exhaustive only when it's used as expression. So if you are not providing any branch, in case of you are not using when as an expression, it will not create any errors or warnings in your code base. But if you are using it as expression, you need to provide all the branches, and else will treat it as a default case for your scenarios. So this is about the when statement that we can use in our code base, rather than using the old if else if or the switch that we have in Java. The next there we will cover about the in operator, which is again in Kotlin. We can use it to apply for the ranges, or for the comparison with if we want to see if any object is there or not. So with the in operator, I found it mostly useful in cases of you playing with the ranges. So if we want to check a certain variable is in range, in our case it's n, which is defined as a 20. So if it's in the range of 0 to 25, do some stuff, otherwise no. And second case, sometimes we want to check our strings with the multiple fields. So in Java, we just defined all the variables and adding conditions, and the if condition is getting lengthy. So in this case, you can just replace this str1 is not equals to 2 and str1 is not equals to 3 with just creating a list. So you can simply say node in, and then you can just create a list of those two fields here, and from there you go. So rather than it's also concising your code base, rather than writing multi-length or the lengthy code in the old Java way, you can concise your code base using operators such as in or when, and there are many others. And as I described earlier, when is also you can use it as a expression. So in this case, here I'm using when as an expression. If you see here, so I'm returning its value to the function, and if a is greater, it takes a function takes a parameter a which is type of int, and if it's 15, return okay, or else return this. And in this case, if you omit the else case, it will warn you that you need to add that case. If you see now, when is underlined with the red, that means there is an error, and if you see it, it says it must be exhaustive at necessary else branch. So you need to add else branch to make it working again. So now everything looks fine. And next thing we will cover about Kotlin Alvis operator. And it's really helpful when we want to assign the value only if it's not nullable, or we want to provide a default values in case of nullable. So I defined here a nullable string, and then using the expression string interpolation, I just print the value. So I just check if it's nullable. If it's not null, this means just this operator work it as like if it's not null, it will implement it will execute the left part. Otherwise, it will execute the right part of your expression. So in our case, it will execute the right part of our code base, and it will print us null because our string is null here. Just a sec. Yes. So that's about the nullable strings and Alvis operator that you can use. And in the console, you can see here it says nullable and I'm a null printer in the console. Next, we will see the maps with the default values. So if you are creating maps with the default values, and if you are having a map, let's say in our case, I created two values, like 1 to map with 1 and 2 to map to 2. And if you try to process it, and if you want to find anything within this map and it doesn't exist, we need to handle those cases with certain kind of a try catch, or wrapping it with if else, something like that. But in this case, it's Kotlin is having another feature which is called with default, and it takes lambda. And if you see the signature of the with default here, it takes a int. That means it's the type of your key which you are going to use when you want to access any element from your map. And if that key doesn't exist, it will return you the default value that you provided in your with default. In our case, which is question mark. And you have to be careful because it only works with the get, like when you are calling get on your function on your map, and it doesn't work if you try to access your values using the index on your map. So this is the cool feature, and it required you to use get over index accessing in maps. So this is the map with the default feature that you can use to avoid crashes or avoid a nullability or any kind of exceptions that might occur when you try to access your map related values or keys. And next, we will cover about the functions that are exist for a string. It's a string blank and is blank and if blank or if empty. So Kotlin has new functions that they added in their added in Kotlin. So the old way we are writing, like even in Java, if the string is blank, we return something or else return that string itself. So it's a bit lengthy code. If you are adding curly braces to both the branches, like the if else, the code is also getting bigger. And the Kotlin has another functions that are called if blank, which takes a lambda, and that lambda will be executed if your code, if your string is a blank, and same for the null one. So here you can see if blank. Let me write you code for you so you can see. So it takes a default value that you are providing, and it will either return the string if it's not blank or the value that you provided in the lambda of if blank or function. And you can use it same as for with the if empty function. And next, we will talk about the nullable lists when we are creating lists from elements which might be a null. So here I have 5 objects, and there is a person 1, which is I treated as a null, set to null. And let's say I created one list here. So this is the old way for adding values to our list before by checking if it's nullable or not. And you can simply avoid this using the function called list of not null, which is again from Kotlin collections, and you will pass the number of elements you want to create a list with, and it will take care for you nullability check. And if there is any object null in the list, it will simply don't add that into the list that you are calling. So this code, it will create a list of objects person 2 and person 3, and it will, when it comes to the person 1, it will not add because it's a null. So this is the function that you can use to create a list of not null from the objects that can be null, just wrapping it with the list of not null. And next, we will talk about streams versus sequence. So when it comes to the collections, we try to process it in a modern way rather than writing for loops for filtering some criteria, because it's like a functional style of writing or filtering lists. So there are two options, like either you can treat your collections as a stream, or you can treat it as a sequence. There is no much effect when your lists are small, like it have only 10 or a few elements. But if your lists are getting bigger in size, let's say you have thousands of elements and you need to filter one out of them, it's really make a big difference in terms of performance of your function of your program. So in this case, I created a list with the 3 objects, and I'm filtering it based on their age and then mapping their names and then getting the first out of that list. And if you see in the code base, it calls 3 times filtering. Here, if you see, I'm processing it right now as a stream, and it takes all the elements, first filter all of them, and then go to the next step. So you can use in sequence to replace the processing of all the elements in your in your collections or list processing. So you just need to write as sequence and then do filter. And if, let me run the code again. So now if you see, it's processing like only the items that we are required. In our case, which is 2 criteria is true, and we are getting only those items that are only meeting the criteria of the filter that we given. In our case, it's age 25, which matches these 2 fields, and that's the difference between sequence and streams. And the next cool feature is destructuring. It's a really awesome feature in in Kotlin. So let's see how it works and how we can use it. So destructuring is like you can create a variables from your objects, and it will automatically destructure the properties of that particular object that you want to access and assign it to the variables that you need. So in our case, I created a sample class with the 3 elements. It has age, name, and phone number. So in this case, I don't have this. Yes. So it has 2 parameters, age and phone number, and you can simply destructure your classes in your code base. And then after, you can simply access those variables that you just assigned those properties of your object, like in our case, age and phone number. But you should never use it if you are not sure about the structure of your class. So in our case, right now we are having 2 fields like age and phone number, which is fine. But let's say later on you change this structure of your class and you added a new property called the name to it. And now if you come back to the destructuring code after adding a new field into your class, so I fixed the issue related to the creation of the constructor by passing new value to the field that we just added called name. And now if you want to destructure, if you see the phone number it's getting highlighted, and if you hover over it will show you like it matches the name of the different components. So right now it has 3 components, your class. First one is age, second is your name, and the third is your phone number. So you need to be careful when you want to use these kind of features from Kotlin, because you need to handle them accordingly. If you are sure or your classes are not going to be editable, then yeah, you go for it. Otherwise, if you are not sure, like maybe there are any changes in future, like you need to add a particular field or any property to your objects, then you try to make sure that you are not breaking your code base by just adding some new things into different places of your code. So this is about the destructuring in Kotlin. And next we have our raw strings in Kotlin, and this is like we are using 3 double quotes for those. And let's see how it makes our life as a developer easier for writing regex expressions in Kotlin. So let's see that one. So the old way we are like in Java, we are when we need to write our regex expressions, we need to use double slashes to to create to create a fields for like integers or words or spaces. So this is the old way that you can also write in Java, in Kotlin, and then you can just convert it to the regex. But if I comment this one and uncomment the following line, and this is the power of the raw strings that you can use in your code, and you don't need to use the double slashes for your key for your regex criteria for integers or whatever. You just simply write your raw string and it will processed as a regular expression. So this is about how we can use those. And there is also a function structured on the your regular expressions that you can use to get the values from your regular expressions. In our case, if it finds, but you need to make sure like if definitely it finds one. So I use the null assertion here, and it will destructure and give me 3 parameters out of that, which is like day, month, year that I defined earlier, which is based on a regular expression. So this is about the regular expressions using raw strings and destructuring in Kotlin. And next we will see the list, the functions related to the list. We have the union, intersection, and subtraction. These are like a math. We if we learned about the unions and intersection and subtract, you can call those functions with your collections. So I created 2 lists here, list and list1, and then call the union on it, and then same like an intersect and then subtract. And if you see the output here in the bottom, you will see the how easily you can rather than filtering all the lists based on the another lists, you can use these functions with your lists to get your expected results, or to process your list based on the some other collections. And next we have in native, like how we are writing our for loops in Kotlin. Yeah, so we don't have that kind of way to writing for loops in Kotlin, like I equals to 0 and I goes until size minus, or goes to the length, and then I plus plus. So we have a function operator called in that we discussed earlier, and this is the way we are writing, like goes to the list dot size -1. And if you see, it's our compiler is already warns me about that, and it says you should use the until or indices. There are 2 options that you can remove this old way of writing your for loops in Kotlin. So I will replace it with indices, and you don't need to write -1 until size, because it will accessing your elements by index. So it starts from 0 and goes to the end of your variables, end of your index. So if it's 9, it goes to the 9. You don't need to process it in the way that you are processing your list in Java, like size -1. And then we have another versions of for loop in our Kotlin. It's a for each indexed, and for each indexed which takes lambda as a parameter. So you can write based on whatever whichever suits your requirements. So this is the sample example which gives you the index and the element in your list. And the second version that I written here, it takes a lambda. So I created 1 lambda for it, which is called person with index. So let's see how it looks like. So yeah, if you see on your right side the code here, so here I written the lambda which takes index like int type of int and then person type of person, and then I'm processing just saying like at index 0 the person name is now or whatever. So it's based on your criteria, you have any xyz object, and if you want to pass the index and this way you can write your for loops. There are 3 or 4 versions that you can use based on your requirements. And the last few functions that are on string, these are extension functions. So you can remove the prefix from your strings. You can remove the surroundings, that means anything at the end or and as well as on the starting of your string. And there is another function which is called a remove suffix. You can use that too if you want, and it takes the parameter that you want to remove from your string. And as we already discussed about the scope functions, there are 2 other functions that are really a good improvement, or I can say like a features of Kotlin, the which is a takeif. So takeif, it will take, you call it on an object and it will only process that object after it matches the predicate. So I say take this object if its length is greater than 15 and then run on it. But you need to be very careful when you are using a take if or take unless, because you need to know that it returns you the nullable object. So if the predicate doesn't matches, it will gives you the nullable string, and you need to add question mark, or if you are sure that it's never gonna be null, you simply use the double question exclamation marks. So to be on the safe side, I use the question mark, and it will run the body of scope function that we are defined here. And you can add else branch using Alvis here. If it's null, so this way you can handle the both the scenarios. So if predicate matches, that's good. That means you have your value which is not nullable, and you will print it will goes to the run. And else, this Alvis operator is after this one, this statement which is I written is run, it will only execute if the parameter is null. So this is these are the few things in the Kotlin library that you can use to write to make your code more effective and looks like more in a Kotlin way. So I will go through the chat and see the questions, and then we will discuss about the Android KTX libraries. So yeah.
Nev, I will just directly add a question in the screen so that you can directly answer it. It was posted quite long, so I will just post it here. You can see on the screen.
So where are you posting?
In the screen, if you can see it in the YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. So how long it will take to move from Java to Kotlin? Yep. So hi Mohammed. So I think there is it's not that much time consuming. It's just when if you are ready, there is a lot of Kotlin free courses over the net. Like you can go to the Udacity and you can find the, if you are Android developer, they are more related to Android, but there is a free Kotlin bootcamp that you can finish in like a couple of weeks, and you are good to go. And you can use the IntelliJ automatic plugin, which converts your Java files to the Kotlin. But again, I mentioned that earlier, like you need to be careful. You just don't need to be only depend on that. And you must have to be like clear concepts in your mind, like what is the nullable thing, nullable, what is platform types that I explained in this chat. But the learning curve is really, it doesn't that hard. If you started, it will just take you a couple of weeks to get started with Kotlin.
Okay, another one I can see is this one.
Okay, so let and apply. Yeah, so this is the mostly question asking for the questions from the, I think, like from the beginners as well as right now those who are writing Kotlin since I think when it's came. So they both have the scope functions, but the thing is they are different. The difference is based on how you are using and what they are taking and how they are taking its receiver and what they are returning. So in case of apply, it returns you the receiver. So you are calling on some object, it will return you that object. And in case of let, it returns you the lambda last statement of your let block. So this is the major difference between those two. And you can check the Kotlin scope functions documentation, and they explained really well like which use case you need to use apply and which use, like they mostly recommend use let when you want to check the nullability of your objects. And with the creation of your objects you should use apply that I explained earlier in the this talk. Yep.
Okay, one more.
What is it? What is code smell? How can we remove such coding? Okay. So yeah, the code smells like there are tools like Sonar, Lint, or even the even the IntelliJ and the Android Studio. They have their own lints that are giving you warnings what you are using. So if you like I earlier, if you see my code base, when I use the for loop with the 0 to size -1, it automatically gives me the warning like, hey, you are using this. There is another better way to write this code. So you can use those kind of plugins with your code base to easily identify what are the code smells in your code. And even sometimes the plugins or the features, they don't uh, don't catch your code smells. Like in case of the non-null assertions, like using double exclamation marks, in those kind of scenarios you need to make sure by yourself, like if you are if you are sure that it will never be null, that's fine. Otherwise you need to change your code. And there is a one plugin, it's datatypes. You can install that, and it will provide you very efficient messages over your code base if there are any issues related to your Kotlin code base.
Guys, any more questions?
So that's all, or we can continue with the Android.
And there one more question.
Okay. Yeah. So for the sequences over streams, I explained earlier, like if your collections are not much bigger, like in the terms of size, in that case, processing your collections as a streams is fine. So if you have, it's a totally is the performance issue. So if you have your collections are really big, like having thousands of elements, and you want to filter few of them based on, let's say, like I explained earlier, you want to find in employee database the employees whose phone number is something, or whose address is something, or who's terminated, and you want to find only one from thousand of entries, right? In that case it doesn't make sense to use streams, because it will first goes through all the database, all the entries, and then get you that one. But in case of sequences, it will, as soon as it finds that one element, it just stop there and it get back to you. So in your bigger collections you should try to use sequences over streams. Yeah.
Any more question, guys? No questions? Chaitanya?
No,
To
Raj,
you.
I'm good.
Okay.
So should we go through Android quickly, or we have time?
We have time. If you want to run through the chat, you can do it.
Oh, there are more questions in chat.
No, one discussion. There are quite good discussions there. So I don't think
Okay.
anyone is having any doubts. Chaitanya, it's up to you.
Yes, Raj, we have time. It's okay.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. I think we had a quite good chat on the chat, and thank you so much for joining. Do not forget to subscribe to the meetup site because that is the main discussion we have it. And also, do not forget to give like or dislike, whatever you like it. If you're going to do a dislike, please make sure you give a comments in the bottom because we need to know what you don't like it so that we can make it better. And make sure that you give feedback about the speaker and the session and about the community so that we can give you a better meetings in the future. Nev, thank you so much for joining and sharing your experience and the topic. We will soon have more sessions with you.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, guys, thank you so
Thank,
much.
thank you, Raj. Thank you, Nav
Thank
Singh.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
man.
everyone, and also thanks for the audience as well. And we have a very good discussion that happened on the chat as well. Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone, for participating in the live discussion.
Hey, Nev, there is one more question for you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is the one. Aren't we are going to give the KTX topic?
Do we have time for that one?
Sure.
Yeah. Go. Then I will share my code. I will go through that quickly. It's just going to be a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. I will go through that.
Okay, guys, we are not going out. We are in. Yeah, Nev, for you.
You see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Nice. So yeah, as we discussed earlier, Kotlin, effective Kotlin, that one is for like all the platforms, whether you are a web developer or whether you are iOS, and if you're writing multi-platform, your code base. And now we will go through the Android specific libraries that helps you to write concise code base in your Android applications. So I will first explain you the libraries that you need to write that kind of code. So there are right now I'm just in this talk I will talk about these 4 libraries that I just highlighted in my code base. If you're able to see those, yeah. So the first one is core KTX, and it has a lot of concised methods or for the core Android libraries that you can use. The second one is for the collections that are specific to Android, like the long sparse array, in sparse array, and there are many others like array map, array set. All those for only those are available through Android framework. The next one is for the live data, and the last one is for the life cycle. And then there are another 2 libraries that are navigation fragment KTX. If you see, I highlighted it, and navigation UI KTX. So if you are using the navigation component from Jetpacks to Jetpack with your fragments, you can use these 2 libraries for writing concise code. So let's see the couple of examples. Let me go through the code. So if you see my code base, this is the old way we are writing our text change listeners in Android. So we mostly dealing with the after text changed, and we need to implement all those methods, and we need to provide commands like, hey, you're not implementing those methods, or just leaving the space there, right? So this is kind of a dead functions, like we are not using them, but still if we want to implement text change listener, we need to implement all those methods from that text voucher. So in the KTX library, you have methods like do on text changed and do after text changed. So you don't need to write a big set of code here, and you can simply implement based on your requirement if you want to implement do on text changed or do after text changed. So this is the first case how you can write more concise code rather than writing the lot of boilerplate code. The second is about how we are accessing our shared preferences. So this is the old editing shared preferences way. We get the editor, we put our values, we call the commit over it, or if you want to apply changes. So these are like multi-step process for editing our shared preferences. But with KTX, you can simply call this lambda, which takes a parameter called commit. If you want to commit, by default it's false. So you can, if you don't want it, you can simply remove that, and it simply takes a parameter called it doesn't take any parameter now, and you can call whatever you want. It takes that shared preferences and edit it for you, and it calls apply on that. And if you want to commit, as I showed you earlier, you just simply pass the boolean value for your commit. So this is the fancy way to dealing with shared preferences. And next is just next to it, if you see how we are setting visibility for our views. So I have one field, I need to set its visibility, so I called visibility and view.visible. So if we have 100 of elements in our layout, we calling like that. So the way around it, either we create our own extension functions in Kotlin, or the KTX has new functions that you can simply use here. So you can use these functions to either to set its visibility, and even you can use it with your conditional checks, like if is visible, that means it returns true if the element is visible, or false if it doesn't. And you can set the properties accordingly if you want, like true in our case. And the next case is the life cycle that I explained you in the dependencies. So the lifecycle dependency help you to bind your work to your life cycle of your fragments or activities. So in our case, if you want to do some stuff only when your fragment is in resumed state, you can call this method like on your lifecycle owner, get the scope, and on that check if the state is resumed, do some stuff. And it's the and the there are many others like launch. There are many others, when created, when started. So you can use it according to your scenarios. So these are really a cool extensions from the KTX library from Android. And the collections KTX, it provides you more functions to deal with the Android framework related collections. In our case, I defined a pair which is Android, and I defined it with one value. And then if you want to convert it to the Kotlin pair, you can simply call the extension called to Kotlin pair. And there are many others. You can just go through that documentation, like just find Android KTX, and it has bunch of KTX, a lot of list of the KTX libraries that you can use to avoid boilerplate code in your code base. And the another one is for the spannable strings. Like there are many methods, so I'm just giving you the idea, like these are the functions that you can use. So if you want to create some fancy strings in your code or in your layout, like different colors and different styles, bold or whatever, So to converting to spannable strings, you can right now you have a extension function which is called toSpannable. So it will return you the spannable string, and you also have another functions called trim length, and there are many functions. So you can check on the Android documentation about Android KTX library. And for the live data, if you are using live data in your code and you have seen the code like this, like you are creating a mutable live data and you define the setter, you are setting its value, then you define the getter like here. So it returns me the add show event that I defined here at the top. With the live data extensions, you get the live data builder, which takes your context, also the scope that you can define provided, but I'm not providing that. So I just call these two methods emit. So emit is like it gives value, it returns the value from the, you need to provide the value that you want to return, which is like a live data in our case. And emit source is like you are calling some function, so you are getting values from room and you are observing that. That means your room query is returning you live data, and you can just call emit source, and you don't need to worry about any changes in your database. And whenever the database changes, the emit source will automatically triggers the changes in this variable that you are defined here. And yeah, so this is for the live data builders, and these are the few extensions in Android, but there are many more. You can go through the docs and find. Yeah, so that's a little brief introduction about the Android KTX.
One question, yep, on the screen.
Life cycle is different. Yeah, it's different, like where you are calling it matters, it depends on that. So in our case, I am calling it from the fragment, so it's tied to that. So in our case, I say launch when created or when resumed. That means the state of the fragment. And if it's in the activity, it's depend on that, because it ties to the context from where you are calling. So if it's activity, it's activities, and if it's fragment, it's fragments.
Another one.
So why is the need of live data required? Just its impact. The live data, and I didn't get the next part, just is impact in Kotlin with normal shared preferences. The things like live data and shared preferences, they both are two different concepts. So the live data is basically a observer pattern that you don't need to implement observers by yourself. So you just create a live data objects and you are observing it from your activities or from your using it with your view models. And the shared preferences, it's a different thing, like you are storing your key pair of key values into the your application related directory, just for it's just for small values. So I didn't get your question exactly, Saurabh. Can you explain more, like what you are talking about live data and shared preferences, or otherwise like those two are totally different concepts? The live data is like totally Android related. It's for the Android framework and Kotlin. Right now, they are introducing new channels and flows that will at some point help you to remove the live data from entirely your code base at one point. But right now, they are at very early stage. But you can take a look on those, and you will get a better idea how you can use those. With the you will get the sense of live data with.
Any questions, guys? I don't think any question. Okay, one more.
Is it okay for room database to return library? Yeah, it's they are because the room is also for the it's from the Jetpack team, and it supports the live data. So you can if you are I'm not sure about the which specific version supporting the live data, but yeah, you can return live data from your room databases, and then simply use it with your you can observe it at anywhere, and you don't need to every time query your database for any changes. It's I think it's higher than 2.0, but yes, you can use live data because Jetpack they both are the components from the Jetpack library. So all the libraries that comes under the Jetpack tree, they supports the live data. Yep, you can use it. Is there any other questions?
One more.
Okay. When would you recommend to use? Oh, okay. So yeah, the use cases for switch map, it's basically depends on the right now I use it for a few use cases, like if you want to trigger something when you want to based on another values, so you can use the switch map with those, and it will trigger the function, the execution, it will execute the lambdas in your switch map body. So I am not sure about many use cases, but I'm using it with combination of with other values, like if something depends on another constraint. So let's say you get the user profile, and now you want to get its more detailed information. So as soon as you get those values, so I will use the switch map to execute another stuff based on that one with the help of the live data that we described earlier. So yeah, you can use with the combination of another live data properties in your file in your code base.
Any more questions, guys? Okay, we have few more. Let me...
Is there any new?
Yep.
Okay.
No, it's there for you.
Okay. Any thoughts about the ongoing transition of APIs from RX Java styles observables or like? Yeah, I so far, Robert, I never played much with the Kotlin flows because it's I think it's an early stage, but I like the coroutines, and I considered the live data at some point. Flows will replace that because live data has some limitations, like for you need if you want to observe it only one time, you need to manipulate some things in there. But and coroutines, I really like them because it helps to remove like a callback hell, that is called, like if you are using retrofit and you need to call callbacks, adding callbacks for handling success scenarios and all that stuff. And for the Kotlin coroutines, they help us to manage easily and effectively our code. It looks like a sequential code, but actually it's asynchronous code. And you can use it with the combination with the live data, like you post something from coroutines, like which is running at any different thread, let's say IO or unconfined, which is like they have 3 dispatchers, IO and main or confined one. So you can use that one with combination with the coroutines using live data as post value. You can post values from the another thread, or if you want to access the values from main thread, you can simply use the set value. So I like Kotlin coroutines with the live data so far, but yeah, definitely the Android will move to the flows very soon when it's getting more stable version. Uh, can you show an example of transformations? Right now, I don't have one, but I think if you can just Google one, I think you can easily get the sample code for how it works and in which cases you can use. Yep.
Any more question, guys? I don't think we have any. I'm not seeing any question coming. Okay, let's close this session. If you guys have it, you can still post it in the comment, or you can join the meetup and you can send the question to us. Or if you want any more sessions on the same topic, Nev can give it next time. So Chaitanya, it's yours.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah. Please join us in the meetup. We do have all the links that are in the description. Please join us. And if you want to share any topic, please let us know. We do have a Telegram channel and Twitter everywhere. So you can ping us anytime. All the description, all the details are available on meetup page. Yep. Thank you now for giving a wonderful session. I already got some of the feedback from my friends as well that the session is really great. Yeah, they got a good knowledge on Kotlin and Android things. Yeah,
Nice.
thank you very much for the good session. Yeah, that's it. We can have a next session. Raj, anything that you want to add?
Guys, if you guys wanted to give a talk or anything, please send us your comments, or you can give us directly send it in our mailing list so that we can host your session as well in our group. Anyway, everything is on online today, so wherever you are, you can really give a session to our user group at any given time. So thank you so much for joining, and we will soon meet you in the next session. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.